The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen such fear. 12 different alien species sat around the massive curved table, their various forms of breathing creating a symphony of worry. Some had tentacles that twisted nervously. Others had multiple eyes that darted back and forth. A few had scales that changed color to show their stress. Admiral Zexstar stood at the center of the room. His blue skin was pale, almost white with fear. His forearms shook as he held up the datapad containing the terrible news. The Valdorian Empire had lost 3 entire fleets in just 2 days. Not damaged, not defeated, completely gone. The readings make no sense, Zexstar said, his voice cracking. Our ships approached the Kepler 442 system for routine exploration. The first fleet sent back normal reports for 6 hours, then ... silence. Council leader Morthak, a being that looked like a giant spider made of crystal, clicked his mandibles together. What happened to the rescue fleets? The same thing. Zexstar's voice was barely a whisper now. We sent our best battleships. Ships that had fought in 100 wars. Ships with shields that could stop planet-killer weapons. They lasted less than 20 minutes. The room erupted in nervous chatter. Different languages mixed together as the species tried to make sense of this news. The aquatic delegation bubbled frantically in their water tanks. The rock people ground their stone fingers together, making sounds like grinding mountains. "Show us the recordings," demanded General Crix of the Insectoid Collective. Her compound eyes reflected the light in 1,000 different directions. Zexstar pressed a button on his datapad. The center of the room filled with a holographic display. Space appeared before them, stars twinkling peacefully. Then something changed. The stars began to bend and twist. Space itself seemed to ripple like water. "What are we looking at?" asked Dr. Yelan, the Council's chief scientist. His tentacles were wrapped tightly around his floating chair. "We call it the Void Maw," Zexstar replied. "It appears to be some kind of cosmic storm, but unlike anything we have ever seen, it moves with purpose. It hunts." The hologram showed their ships approaching what looked like a massive tornado made of purple and black energy. The storm was huge, bigger than most moons. Lightning crackled through its spiraling form, but this lightning was not normal. It seemed alive, reaching out like hungry fingers. As the Council watched, the Valdorian ships opened fire. Their plasma cannons shot bright beams of energy at the storm. Their missile systems launched hundreds of explosive projectiles. For a moment, it looked like they might hurt the thing, but then the impossible happened. The storm began to grow. Larger. Every weapon that hit it made it stronger. The lightning fingers reached out and grabbed the ships. The vessels were pulled into the swirling darkness and disappeared. "By the old gods," whispered Chancellor Vex of the Telepathic Union. "It feeds on our weapons." "Not just weapons," Zexstar said grimly. "Our scientists think it feeds on energy itself. The power cores of our ships, the life force of our crews, everything." The recording continued. It showed the Second Fleet trying a different approach. They used their fastest ships, trying to outrun the storm. But the Void Maw moved faster than light itself. It caught them easily. The Third Fleet tried to use their most advanced shields, creating barriers that could protect against black holes. The storm ate through them like they were made of paper. "How big is this thing now?" asked President Kohler of the Machine Empire. His robotic voice carried a note of static that suggested fear. "After consuming our fleets, it has grown to the size of a small planet, and it's moving toward the Centauri system. 3 billion lives are in danger." Panic filled the room. The Centauri system was one of the most important trade hubs in the galaxy. If it fell, the economic damage would be terrible. But more importantly, billions of innocent beings would die. "We must evacuate immediately," declared High Priestess Mela of the Spiritual Coalition. Her golden robes fluttered as she stood. "Get everyone out of the system. Already started," Zexstar nodded. "But evacuation ships are slow? We have maybe 2 days before the entity reaches populated worlds." "What about our combined military forces?" suggested War Chief Grax of the warrior clans. His tusks gleamed as he spoke. Surely, if we work together. The entity grows stronger with every attack, Dr. Yalan interrupted. If we send our entire military, we might make it powerful enough to threaten the entire galaxy. The room fell silent. For the first time in the Council's 1,000-year history, they faced something they could not fight, could not negotiate with, and could not understand. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy were helpless. Then a small voice spoke up from the back of the room. We would like to try. Every head, tentacle, and optical sensor turned toward the speaker. Ambassador. Sarah Mitchell of the Human Coalition stood up. She was small compared to most council members, but her eyes held a determination that surprised them. I'm sorry, what? Morthic's crystal form clinked in confusion. Humanity requests permission to approach the entity, Sarah said clearly. We think we might be able to help. For a moment, the room was completely silent. Then someone started laughing. It was General Crix, her insectoid mandibles chattering with mirth. Soon others joined in. The aquatic delegation's bubbling turned into what could only be described as underwater giggling. You cannot be serious, Chancellor Vex said, his telepathic voice filled with disbelief. Your species has barely mastered space travel. You don't even have faster-than-light engines? What could you possibly do that we cannot? Sarah's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice calm. With respect, Chancellor, your advanced technology is exactly what this entity feeds on. Maybe a different approach is needed. A different approach? War Chief Grax snorted, which sounded like a small volcano erupting. Child, we have tried everything. Energy weapons, kinetic weapons, gravity bombs, reality distortion fields, nothing works. That's exactly my point, Sarah replied. You've tried to fight it. Maybe fighting isn't the answer. Admiral Zextar shook his head sadly. Ambassador. Mitchell, I appreciate your species' courage. But this is not a problem that can be solved with. What do you humans call it? Optimism. This entity has destroyed some of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy. Every species that has faced it has used the same tactics, Sarah pressed on. Attack, defend, retreat. What if there's another way? Like what? Dr. Yalan asked, though. His tone suggested he was only being polite. We won't know until we try. The laughter in the room had died down, replaced by something that felt like pity. These alien beings looked at Sarah the way adults might look at a child who wanted to fight a dragon with a wooden sword. The answer is no, Morthic declared with finality. We will not allow a primitive species to throw their lives away on an impossible task. The evacuation will continue. We will find another solution. But as the council session ended and the various species filed out of the Great Hall, Sarah Mitchell remained standing. Her small human delegation gathered around her. There were only 5 of them, representing all of humanity's presence in galactic politics. They won't let us try, said Captain Chun, Sarah's military advisor. Then we don't ask permission, Sarah replied quietly. Sarah, that's going against direct council orders, warned Dr. Park, their chief scientist. Sometimes, Sarah said, looking out at the stars through the Great Hall's transparent dome, you have to do what's right instead of what's safe. Unknown to the council members hurrying to their ships, humanity was about to do what they did best. They were going to ignore the impossible and try anyway. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the U's Harmony, watching the stars streak past as her small fleet moved toward certain death. At least that's what every alien species in the galaxy believed. The 5 human ships were tiny compared to the massive battleships that had already been destroyed. They looked like toys next to the Valdorian war machines that had been swallowed by the Void Maw. Captain, we're receiving another message from the Galactic Council, reported Lieutenant Kim from the communications station. Admiral Zextar is demanding we turn back immediately. Tell the Admiral we appreciate his concern, Sarah replied calmly. But we're going to continue our mission. The other 4 ships in their fleet were following close behind. The U's Hope carried Dr. Martinez and her team of xenobiologists. The U's Discovery held Professor Williams and his Cultural Studies Department. The used piece was loaded with musicians, artists, and poets. The strangest ship of all was the UES Friend, which carried no weapons at all. Instead, it was filled with gifts, games, books, and recordings of human children laughing. "Ma'am," called out Navigator Jackson, "we're approaching the edge of the Kepler 442 system. The entity should be visible soon?" Sarah nodded and activated the ship-wide communication system. "All vessels, this is Captain Chun. Remember, we are not here to fight. We are here to meet something that might be as confused and scared as we are." In the science lab of the UES Hope, Dr. Martinez was reviewing their mission parameters one more time. Unlike the military commanders who had faced the Void Maw, she was not thinking about weapons or shields. She was thinking about behavior patterns. "The entity always attacks first," she muttered to herself, making notes on her tablet. "But what if it's not really attacking? What if it's trying to communicate?" Her assistant, Dr. Johnson, looked up from his own research. "You think a cosmic storm is trying to talk?" "Not talk like we do," Dr. Martinez explained. "But think about it. Every time ships approach, it reaches out with those energy tendrils. Every military commander sees this as an attack. But what if it's actually trying to make contact?" Meanwhile, on the UES Discovery, Professor Williams was having a similar thought. He had spent his entire career studying how different species communicated. He knew that what looked threatening to one species might be friendly to another. "The Valdorians use aggressive posturing as a greeting," he told his team. "The insectoids dance to show peaceful intentions. What if this entity has its own way of saying hello and we've been misunderstanding it?" On the used piece, the musicians were preparing for the strangest concert of their lives. Maria Santos, a violinist from Earth, was tuning her instrument. Next to her, Jake Thompson checked his guitar one more time. In the back of the room, the ship's small orchestra was warming up with quiet scales and gentle melodies. "Are you sure about this?" asked Tommy, the youngest member of their group. He was barely 18 and played the drums with more enthusiasm than skill. "No," Maria admitted with a smile. "But that's never stopped humans before. The UES Friend was the quietest of all the ships. Its crew was small, just 12 people led by Dr. Sarah Kim, a child psychologist who had volunteered for the strangest assignment in human history. Their ship was filled with things that made humans happy: photo albums full of family pictures, recordings of babies laughing and dogs barking, handmade toys and drawings from Earth schools. "If this thing is really alone out there," Dr. Kim said to her crew, "maybe it just needs to know that someone cares." As the 5 ships moved deeper into the system, their sensors began to pick up the entity. At first, it was just a distortion on their screens. Then it became visible to the naked eye through the viewing ports. "Sweet mother of ... Navigator Jackson whispered, forgetting his training for a moment. The Void Maw was beautiful and terrible at the same time. It looked like a hurricane made of space itself, spinning slowly through the cosmos. Purple and black energy swirled in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Lightning that seemed to be made of pure thought crackled through its form. It was bigger than anything natural had a right to be, and it pulsed with a rhythm that almost sounded like a heartbeat. "All ships, hold position," Sarah commanded. "Do not raise shields. Do not charge weapons. Do not make any threatening moves." "Captain," reported Lieutenant Kim, her voice tight with worry, "the entity has detected us. It's changing course to intercept." Through the viewports, they could see the massive storm turning toward them. Energy tendrils began to reach out, the same tendrils that had destroyed 3 entire fleets. Every instinct screamed at them to run or fight. Instead, Sarah did something that no military commander in galactic history had ever done. "Open a channel to all ships," she ordered. "Begin the first contact protocol." On the used piece, Maria Santos raised her violin and began to play. The melody was simple and sad, a human lullaby that mothers had sung to children for thousands of years. Jake Thompson joined in with gentle guitar chords. Soon the entire orchestra was playing their music transmitted into space on all frequencies. On the UES Discovery, Professor Williams activated his cultural database. Instead of military signals or scientific data, he began broadcasting human poetry. The words of Shakespeare and Maya Angelou, of ancient Chinese philosophers and modern songwriters, flowed out into the cosmos. Dr. Martinez on the UES Hope was transmitting mathematical sequences, but not the kind used for targeting weapons. She sent out the Fibonacci series, pi calculated to 1,000 decimal places, and the golden ratio. These were the patterns that humans found beautiful in nature. The UES friend began broadcasting its strangest cargo of all. The sounds of human life, children singing nursery rhymes, families laughing around dinner tables, the sound of rain on leaves and waves on beaches, all the small, gentle sounds that made humans feel at home. The Void Maw's energy tendrils reached toward the human ships, and everyone held their breath. This was the moment when every other fleet had been destroyed. The tendrils touched the hull of the U's Harmony and ... Nothing happened. The entity paused. Its swirling form seemed to slow down. The lightning that crackled through its being changed, color from angry red to curious blue. "It's listening," Dr. Martinez whispered in amazement. "Look at the energy patterns. It's actually listening to our music." The entity's tendrils touched each ship gently, like fingers reading Braille. Instead of draining their power, it seemed to be sampling the transmissions they were sending. The music, the poetry, the mathematical beauty, the sounds of human joy and sorrow. "Captain," reported the ship's science officer, "we're receiving some kind of response. It's not in any language we know, but it's definitely intentional communication." Sarah smiled for the first time since leaving Earth. "All ships, continue. Transmission, let's see what it has to say." The response came not as words or images, but as pure emotion transmitted directly into their minds. Loneliness so deep it felt like falling through space forever. Confusion at finding something new after eons of sameness. And underneath it all, a desperate hunger not for energy or matter, but for connection. "Oh my God," whispered Dr. Kim from the UES friend. "It's not a weapon. It's not a monster. It's just ... alone." The entity began to change its form. The angry storm became something softer, more controlled. The lightning changed from violent strikes to gentle pulses. It was trying to communicate in the only way it knew how, by changing itself to match the emotions it was feeling from the human transmissions. "This is incredible," Professor Williams said over the communication link. "We're witnessing first contact with a being that experiences emotion on a cosmic scale." Sarah activated her personal communicator and spoke directly to the entity, even though she wasn't sure it could understand words. "Hello, my name is Sarah. We're humans. We're not here to hurt you. We just wanted to meet you." The response was immediate. A wave of surprise and hope so strong that it brought tears to the eyes of every human in the fleet. The entity had been alone for so long that it had forgotten others could exist without wanting to destroy or flee from it. "All ships," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "I think we just made a new friend." But their celebration was interrupted by an urgent message from Lieutenant Kim. "Captain, we're receiving transmissions from the Galactic Council fleet. Admiral Zextar is approaching with a full battle group. They think we're in distress and are coming to rescue us." Sarah's blood ran cold. If the Council ships arrived with weapons charged and shields raised, the entity might interpret it as an attack. After everything they had accomplished, first contact might end in tragedy. "Get me a direct line to Admiral Zextar," she ordered. "We need to warn them before they do something that destroys everything we've built here." The entity seemed to sense the change in mood. Its form began to darken again, and the lightning started to turn red. It could feel the humans' distress, and was preparing to defend its new friends from whatever was causing them fear. "Hurry," Sarah whispered. "We're running out of time." "Admiral Zextar, you must stop your approach immediately." Sarah's voice crackled across space as she spoke into her communicator. "Do not raise shields or charge weapons." The response came back filled with static and confusion. "Captain Chun, what is your status? Our sensors show the entity surrounding your ships. Are you under attack? Through the viewport, Sarah could see the Galactic Council fleet approaching fast. 12 massive battleships with enough firepower to destroy planets. Their shields were already glowing and their weapon systems were warming up. The entity, which they now knew was trying to protect the humans, began to respond to what it saw as a threat. Admiral, listen to me carefully, Sarah said, fighting to keep her voice calm. The entity is not attacking us. We have made contact. It is friendly. But if you approach with weapons ready, it will defend itself and us. There was a long pause. Then Admiral Zextar's voice came back, filled with disbelief. Captain, that is impossible. This entity has destroyed 3 of our finest fleets, because they attacked it first. Sarah shot back. Every ship that approached it came in ready for battle. It was defending itself, not hunting. On the UES Hope, Dr. Martinez was working frantically with her team to establish better communication with the entity. They had discovered that it responded to mathematical patterns, but not the cold, logical kind used by most species. It responded to the mathematics of emotion, the patterns found in music and art. Try the harmonic series from Bach's compositions, she told her assistant, and combine it with the Fibonacci sequence we used earlier. The result was immediate. The entity's form shifted, and suddenly the humans began to receive clearer impressions. Images flowed into their minds. Not through technology, but through some kind of direct mental connection, they saw the entity's memories. It had once been part of a group, a family of cosmic beings that danced between the stars. But as the universe expanded and changed, they had been separated. One by one, the others had faded away, either dying or moving beyond reach. The entity had been alone for millions of years, wandering through space, calling out for others like itself. It has a name, whispered Dr. Martinez, tears streaming down her face. It calls itself Ethon. It means burning bright in an ancient language. It was trying to burn bright enough for its family to find it. Professor Williams on the U's Discovery had been analyzing the entity's attempts at communication. It's been trying to talk to every ship that approached it, he realized. The energy tendrils weren't weapons. They were ... handshakes. It was trying to touch and communicate the only way it knew how. The tragedy of the situation became clear. Ethon had been desperately lonely, reaching out to every ship that came near, hoping to find someone who would understand. But every species had interpreted its greeting as an attack and had responded with violence. In defending itself, Ethon had accidentally destroyed the very beings it was trying to connect with. "Oh, Ethon," Sarah whispered, and somehow the entity heard her. A wave of recognition and gratitude flowed through the mental connection. It was the first time in millions of years that someone had spoken its name with kindness, but the Council fleet was still approaching, and their intentions were becoming clear. Admiral Zextar's voice cut through the communication channel again. "Captain Chun, step away from the entity immediately. We are going to attempt to destroy it with a coordinated strike. Your small ships should be able to escape while we keep it distracted." "No," Sarah shouted. "Admiral, you don't understand. It's not a threat. It's a person." "A person?" The Admiral's voice was filled with scorn. "Captain, I think the stress of your situation has affected your judgment. That thing is a cosmic predator." Sarah looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. They had all felt Ethan's emotions, had seen its memories. They knew the truth. But how could they make the Council understand? "Dr. Martinez," Sarah called over the communication link. "Can you show them what we've seen? Can you transmit Ethan's memories to the Council fleet?" "I can try," came the reply. "But their ship systems are designed to block unknown transmissions. They'll interpret it as an attack." Meanwhile, Ethon had sensed the approaching threat. Its form began to change, growing darker and more turbulent. The protective instincts that had helped it survive for millions of years were taking over. Lightning crackled through its being, but this time it was clearly preparing for battle on the U's piece. Maria Santos made a desperate decision. She began to play again, but this time she chose a different piece of music. It was Beethoven's Ode to Joy, a piece that celebrated the brotherhood of all living things. The other musicians joined in, and their music flooded out into space. The effect on Ethan was immediate. Its form softened slightly, the lightning shifting from angry red to confused yellow. It could feel the humans' distress and their desperate desire for peace. That's it, Professor Williams realized. Music is a universal language. It can convey emotions directly. Ethan, can you help us show the Council what we've learned? The response came as a gentle touch of energy against the UES discovery. Ethan was offering to share its power, to amplify their transmissions so that the Council fleet could not ignore them. Do it, Sarah ordered. Show them the truth. What happened next had never occurred in galactic history. Ethan's vast consciousness merged temporarily with the human communication systems, amplifying their signals beyond anything their small ships should have been capable of. The combined transmission of music, mathematics, emotion, and memory burst out toward the Council fleet with the power of a small star. The effect on the alien crews was overwhelming. Suddenly, every being on every ship experienced what Ethan had experienced, the loneliness of eons spent in empty space, the desperate hope every time a new ship appeared, the crushing disappointment when each contact ended in violence, the slow realization that it might be doomed to spend eternity alone. On the bridge of the Council flagship, Admiral Zexstar staggered as the emotions hit him. His forearms gripped his command chair as he felt the weight of millions of years of solitude. Around him, his crew was having similar reactions. Some were crying. Others had fallen to their knees. "By the ancient stars," the Admiral whispered. "What have we done?" The transmission continued, showing them the moment when the humans had first made contact. The explosion of joy and relief that Ethan had felt when someone finally responded, with kindness instead of fear. The desperate hope that maybe, finally, it had found friends. "All ships, power down weapons," Admiral Zexstar ordered, his voice shaking. "Lower shields. We ... We have made a terrible mistake." The Council fleet slowed its approach, their threatening posture melting away, but the damage was almost done. Ethan had been preparing to defend the humans, and cosmic entities did not change direction quickly. Energy was building up in its core, enough to destroy the entire Council fleet. "Ethan, no!" Sarah called out, both verbally and through their mental connection. "They understand now. They're not going to hurt us." But Ethan was confused. Its ancient instincts were screaming at it to protect these precious new friends from the approaching threat. It had lost everything else in the universe. It would not lose the humans too. Sarah made a decision that would have seemed insane to any military commander. She ordered her ship to move directly between Ethan and the Council fleet. "If you want to protect us," she said, speaking directly to Ethan's consciousness, "then trust us. These beings can become our friends too, but only if you let them." The entity paused, its energy build-up fluctuating. Through their connection, Sarah could feel its internal struggle. Millions of years of loneliness and self-defense warring against this new concept of trust and community. Dr. Kim from the UES friend had an idea. She activated her ship's speakers and began to play one of the recordings they had brought. It was a simple sound, but one that humans found deeply comforting. It was the sound of a human mother singing a lullaby to her child. The effect on Ethan was profound. The entity had never heard anything like it. The concept of a parent caring for a child, protecting them not through violence but through love, was completely alien to its experience. But somehow it understood. Slowly, carefully, Ethan began to pull back its energy. The threatening buildup dissipated, replaced by something warmer and gentler. The entity wrapped its consciousness around the human ships like a protective embrace. But it was no longer preparing for war. "Admiral," Sarah called to the Council fleet, "I'd like you to meet our new friend. His name is Ethan, and he's been alone for a very long time. He's not a monster or a weapon. He's just someone who needs friends." There was a long pause. Then, to everyone's surprise, it was not Admiral Zexstar who responded first. It was Dr. Yalan, the Council's chief scientist, speaking from one of the research vessels. "Ethan," the tentacled being said slowly, "I am Dr. Yalan. We are sorry we did not understand. We would like to learn more about you, if you are willing. The response came as a wave of cautious hope. Ethon extended a small tendril of energy toward the council ship, moving slowly and carefully. When it touched the hull, instead of draining power, it sent a gentle pulse of greeting. Remarkable, Dr. Yulon whispered. It's trying to shake hands. 3 months had passed since first contact with Ethon, and the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, debates raged about the implications of humanity's success. But in the Kepler 442 system, something beautiful was taking shape. Captain Sarah Chun stood in the observation deck of the new human research station, watching Ethon play. The cosmic entity had learned to control its size and energy output, shrinking down to roughly the size of a large building. Right now, it was chasing a small probe that Dr. Martinez had designed, moving through space like a cosmic dolphin playing with a ball. The changes are remarkable, Dr. Martinez said, checking her readings on a tablet. Ethon has learned to feed on solar radiation and cosmic background energy instead of technology. Its aggression levels have dropped to almost nothing. Sarah smiled as she watched Ethon perform a complex spiral through space, its energy form, leaving beautiful trails of purple and gold light. It's like watching a child learn to play for the first time. And in many ways, that's exactly what they were seeing. Ethon had spent millions of years in survival mode, fighting to stay alive in an empty universe. Now, for the first time, it was learning what it meant to have friends, to feel safe, to simply enjoy existence. The partnership had grown beyond anyone's expectations. Ethon had an understanding of space and cosmic forces that far exceeded any known science. In return for friendship and companionship, it had begun sharing its knowledge with the humans. "Captain," called Lieutenant Kim from the communications station, "we're receiving a message from the UES Explorer. Captain Rodriguez says they've found something incredible." Sarah activated the main view screen. Captain Rodriguez appeared, his dark face split by an enormous grin. Behind him, through the ship's viewport, they could see a solar system unlike anything in the galactic databases. "Sarah, you have to see this," Rodriguez said excitedly. "Ethon guided us to this system, and it's full of resources we've never seen before, elements that don't appear on any periodic table. Energy crystals that could power entire cities. And the planets, some of them have gravity fields that spiral in patterns. It's like the laws of physics work differently here." This was becoming a common occurrence. Ethon's cosmic senses could detect things that no technology could measure. It knew where to find rare resources, how to predict solar storms, and which systems contained undiscovered forms of life. The entity had become humanity's guide to the hidden wonders of the universe, but more importantly, Ethon was learning to be happy. Dr. Kim had introduced the concept of games, and the ancient being had taken to them with the enthusiasm of a child. It particularly enjoyed hide-and-seek, using its ability to bend space to hide in impossible places. The human crews would spend hours trying to find it, while Ethon giggled in frequencies that made their instruments sing. "Incoming transmission from the Galactic Council," reported Lieutenant Kim. "It's marked as urgent." The view screen switched to show Admiral Zextar, but he looked different than before. The fear and suspicion that had marked his features during their first meeting were gone, replaced by something that looked almost like envy. "Captain Chun," the Admiral said formally, "the Council has a request to make. We would like permission to send a diplomatic mission to study your partnership with the entity." Sarah exchanged glances with her crew. They had been expecting this. Word of humanity's success with Ethon had spread throughout the galaxy, and other species were desperate to understand how they had done it. "We would be happy to receive a diplomatic mission," Sarah replied carefully. "But I should warn you, Admiral. Ethon is not a resource to be exploited. It's not a weapon to be controlled. It's a friend. Any species that approaches with the intention of using Ethon will be disappointed." "We understand," Zextar nodded, though Sarah could see the hunger in his eyes. The Valdorian Empire had lost 3 fleets to Ethon. Now they wanted to know how to avoid such losses in the future, and hopefully gain some advantage for themselves. The first diplomatic mission arrived a week later. It was led by Dr. Yulan, the Council's chief scientist, and included representatives from 6 different species. Sarah met them at the station's docking bay. With Ethon hovering nearby in its smaller form, the aliens approached cautiously. Despite everything they had learned about Ethon's friendly nature, millions of years of evolutionary instinct were hard to overcome. The entity looked like a miniature star, pulsing with energy that could theoretically vaporize all of them in seconds. "Greetings." "Ethon," Dr. Yulan said formally, his tentacles trembling slightly. "I am honored to meet you." Ethon's response was immediate and overwhelming. A wave of joy and excitement flooded the minds of everyone present. The entity had learned that each new friend was a precious gift, and it was thrilled to meet more people, but then something unexpected happened. Ethon tried to communicate with the aliens the same way it communicated with humans, through direct emotional contact. For the humans, this felt natural and comforting. For the aliens, it was terrifying. Dr. Yulan stumbled backward, his tentacles writhing in distress. The insectoid representative began clicking frantically. The crystalline being from the Silicon Alliance started flashing warning colors. "It's trying to get inside our minds," gasped Commander Crix of the warrior clans. "No," Sarah said quickly, stepping between the aliens and Ethon. "It's trying to say hello. That's how it communicates with us, but the damage was done." The aliens had reacted with fear, and Ethon could sense their terror. The entity's form began to darken with confusion and hurt. It had been so excited to make new friends, and now they were afraid of it. "I don't understand," Dr. Yulan said, backing away further. "How do you tolerate such invasive mental contact?" Sarah realized the problem. "You think it's invasive because you're afraid of it, but we invited it in. We opened our minds willingly." "That's impossible," Commander Crix declared. "No sane being would allow an unknown entity access to their thoughts?" "Why not?" asked Dr. Kim, who had joined them in the docking bay. "Ethon has never hurt us. It's lonely and wants to connect." "What's so frightening about letting someone lonely know that you care about them?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. The alien representatives looked at each other, then at the humans, then at Ethon. The cosmic entity had shrunk, even smaller, and was hovering near Sarah like a child hiding behind its mother. Dr. Yulan was the first to understand. "You trust it?" he said wonderingly. "Completely, and without reservation. That's why the mental contact doesn't frighten you." "Trust has to be earned," Commander Crix argued. "This entity destroyed 3 fleets. Because 3 fleets attacked it first," Sarah replied patiently. "Ethon has never hurt anyone who approached it with peaceful intentions. The question is, can you approach something with peaceful intentions if you're already convinced it wants to hurt you?" "It was Professor Williams who suggested the solution. What if we start smaller?" he said. "Instead of direct mental contact, what if Ethon communicated through our music and art? It learned to understand us that way first." The experiment began the next day. The aliens brought their own cultural representatives. The aquatic delegation contributed songs that sounded like whale calls mixed with crystal chimes. The rock people shared sculptures that told stories through texture and shape. The insectoids performed dances that were mathematical equations expressed through movement. Ethon was fascinated. It had learned human communication, but each species had their own unique way of expressing emotions and ideas. The entity began to respond to each form of art in its own way, creating light patterns for the aquatic songs, shifting its density to match the rock people's sculptures, and moving in harmony with the insectoid dances. Slowly, carefully, trust began to build. The aliens started to see Ethon not as a cosmic horror, but as an eager student trying to learn their languages. When the crystalline being shared a light poem about the beauty of ordered structures, Ethon responded by creating crystal formations in space that told the same story. But the real breakthrough came when the telepathic representative Chancellor Vex finally agreed to try direct mental contact. Unlike the others, his species was used to sharing thoughts. He approached Ethan slowly, lowering his mental barriers. The contact was gentle, nothing like the invasive mind-reading he had expected. Instead, he felt what the humans had felt. Loneliness deeper than space, gratitude warmer than starlight, and an innocent joy at making new friends. "Oh," Chancellor Vex whispered, tears running down his face. "Oh, you poor sweet child. You've been alone for so long." Ethan's response was a pulse of pure happiness that lit up the entire station. Finally, another being understood. Word of the successful contact spread quickly. More diplomatic missions arrived, and each one learned the same lesson. Ethan was not a weapon or a resource. It was a person who had been shaped by millions of years of loneliness into something that seemed threatening but was actually desperate for connection. The partnership between humans and Ethan began to change galactic politics. Other species started asking the humans to mediate their own first contact situations. If humans could befriend a cosmic entity, surely they could help with more conventional diplomatic problems. 6 months after first contact with Ethan, Captain Sarachan stood before the Fully of the Galactic Council. The Great Hall had been modified to accommodate their unusual delegation. Behind Sarah, visible through the transparent dome, Ethan's magnificent form spiraled gently through space. The cosmic entity had learned to make itself beautiful instead of threatening, its energy patterns flowing like aurora across the stars. The 12 species of the Council sat in their designated areas, but the atmosphere was completely different from that first emergency session. Where once there had been fear and panic, now there was curiosity and hope. Representatives from 30 additional species had requested permission to attend, all wanting to witness this historic moment. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's advanced acoustics. 6 months ago, you faced a threat that seemed impossible to defeat. Today, I stand before you not as the representative of a small, primitive species, but as the friend of a being who has chosen to dedicate its existence to protecting and helping all life in this galaxy. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The changes in galactic politics had been dramatic. 3 major conflicts had been resolved through human mediation, using lessons learned from their contact with Ethan. The spiral war between the Mechanical Empire and the Organic Collective had ended when humans helped both sides realize they were fighting over resources that Ethan could help them find elsewhere. Admiral Zextar stood to address the assembly. The Vivaldorian looked remarkably different from the terrified commander, who had first brought news of the Void Maw. His blue skin had returned to its normal, healthy color, and his forearms moved with confident gestures instead of nervous trembling. "The Valdorian Empire wishes to formally apologize for our initial response to the entity known as Ethan," he announced. "Our fear and aggression nearly cost us the friendship of the most powerful ally our galaxy has ever known." It was true. Ethan's abilities had proven far beyond what anyone had imagined. The entity could move faster than light without using traditional engines. It could predict cosmic weather patterns months in advance. Most remarkably, it had begun teaching selected humans how to manipulate space-time in ways that made their previous technology look primitive. Dr. Martinez, now the head of the Human Ethan Research Division, had learned to create small gravity wells with her bare hands. Captain Rodriguez could fold space around his ship, allowing for instantaneous travel across vast distances. These abilities came not from technology, but from Ethan sharing its understanding of how the universe actually worked. "The question before us today," continued Admiral Zextar, "is not whether humanity deserves a place in galactic leadership. The question is whether we deserve their friendship." Council leader Morthek rose from his crystalline throne, his faceted form catching and reflecting the light from Ethan's gentle glow. "The crystal hegemony seconds this sentiment. Humanity has demonstrated abilities that none of our species possess. They have turned our greatest threat into our greatest protector." As if responding to the praise, Ethan pulsed with warm golden light. Through their mental connection, Sarah could feel the entity's contentment. For the first time in millions of years, Ethan felt useful, valued, and loved, but the real demonstration was yet to come. Sarah had requested this special session not just to receive honors, but to show the council what their partnership with Ethan had truly accomplished. Honored representatives, Sarah continued, I would like to show you something that Ethan and humanity have been working on together. A gift for the galaxy. She activated a communication device, and immediately the view screen in the center of the hall came to life. It showed a star system that many of the council members recognized. The Terminus system, a region of space that had been considered dead for over 1,000 years. Ancient wars had stripped its planets of atmosphere and life, leaving behind nothing but radioactive rocks orbiting a dying star, but the system on the screen was alive. Green and blue planets orbited a young, healthy star. Clouds swirled in thick atmospheres. The readings showed abundant water, breathable air, and the early signs of developing ecosystems. Impossible, whispered Dr. Yulon, his tentacles curling. In disbelief, the Terminus system is a dead zone. We've sent survey missions there for centuries. Ethan can manipulate matter and energy on a cosmic scale, Sarah explained. It has spent the last 3 months restoring the Terminus system. Not just making it habitable, but actually bringing it back to life. The implications hit the assembly like a shockwave. If Ethan could restore dead star systems, it could solve the galaxy's population and resource problems. Overcrowded worlds could be relieved. Dead systems could be reborn. The possibilities were endless, but why? Asked General Crix of the Insectoid Collective. What does the entity gain from such efforts? Sarah smiled and looked up at Ethan through the dome. The cosmic entity pulsed with what she had learned to recognize as happiness. Ethan gains the same thing we all gain from helping others, she said. The knowledge that we've made the universe a little bit better than we found it. President Kohler of the Machine Empire activated his vocal synthesizers. This raises important questions about galactic governance. An entity with such power cannot be allowed to operate without oversight. Sarah's expression hardened. This was the conversation she had been dreading but expecting. Ethan is not a resource to be managed or a weapon to be controlled. It is a free being who chooses to help because it wants to, not because anyone forces it to. But surely some form of coordination is necessary, pressed High Priestess Mela of the Spiritual Coalition. Such power must be used responsibly. And it is, Sarah replied firmly. Ethan won't restore a system or provide resources to any species that intends to use them for conquest or oppression. It judges each request based on whether it will increase the overall happiness and well-being of galactic civilization. Chancellor Vex of the Telepathic Union stood slowly. His species' ability to read minds made his words carry special weight. I have touched the entity's consciousness, he announced. Its motivations are pure. It seeks only to heal the loneliness and suffering it has experienced. Humanity has not tamed a weapon. They have befriended a guardian angel. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. Humanity's success with Ethan had changed the balance of power in the galaxy. Not through conquest or intimidation, but through demonstrating a completely different approach to interspecies relations. As the session drew to a close, Council Leader Morthak made the formal announcement that everyone had been expecting. By unanimous vote of all member species, the Galactic Council extends an offer of full membership to humanity, with immediate placement on the High Council and authority over all first contact protocols. Sarah felt a surge of pride, but also responsibility. Humanity had gone from being a minor species on the galactic fringe to one of the most important civilizations in known space. Not because they had built bigger weapons or conquered more systems, but because they had shown that friendship was more powerful than fear. We accept the Council's offer, Sarah replied formally. But we accept it not just for humanity, but for all species who believe that understanding is better than conflict. That cooperation is stronger than competition, and that the universe is big enough for everyone to find their place. Ethan's response came as a wave of joy that touched every mind in the assembly. The entity had gone from being a cosmic nightmare to being the galaxy's greatest hope. And it had all started with a small group of humans who had looked at something terrifying and alien and decided to say hello instead of goodbye. After the session ended, Sarah walked through the station's observation deck with Dr. Martinez and Professor Williams. Through the transparent walls, they could see Ethan playing with a group of young aliens from a dozen different species. The entity had become a teacher as well as a protector, sharing its cosmic perspective with anyone curious enough to learn. Do you think we did the right thing? Dr. Martinez asked, watching Ethan create a small solar system in miniature for the children to study. I think we did the human thing, Sarah replied. We saw someone who was lonely and scared, and we decided to be their friend. Everything else just followed from that. Professor Williams nodded thoughtfully. The council members keep asking how we knew it would work. How we knew Ethan wouldn't destroy us. We didn't know, Sarah admitted, but that's the point. You can't make friends with someone if you're not willing to take the risk of being hurt. Trust has to come first, even when it seems dangerous. As they watched, one of the young aliens, a small crystalline child, approached Ethan with obvious nervousness. The entity immediately made itself smaller and dimmer so as not to frighten the child. When the young being finally worked up the courage to touch one of Ethan's energy tendrils, the cosmic entity responded with such gentle warmth that the child began to giggle in crystalline chimes. Look at that, Dr. Martinez whispered in wonder. 6 months ago, that entity was the most feared thing in the galaxy. Now it's babysitting. Sarah smiled as she watched Ethan carefully lift the crystal child into the